My name's Kurt Vermaak. I'm the IOPS technical manager in the Western Cape. Fairly new role that became available at the beginning of the year. And this morning, I want to speak about the role of the sacrificial anode. Usually we just say anode, but it is a sacrificial anode. It gives itself up, and I'll explain the reason why. The sacrificial anode is probably one of the most important parts of the geyser. Yes, it doesn't heat your water up and it doesn't set the temperature, but it does look after your geyser. And that's why it's very important. It plays a very important role. So what is a sacrificial anode? Now, a sacrificial anode is a rod. You all know the thickness of the rod. You've all seen it. It's a temporary steel core. It's a wire, like a, for want of a better word, blow dart. And it's either made from magnesium, aluminium, or zinc around it. The magnesium, the aluminium, or the zinc have different softnesses. In other words, they dissolve at a different rate. So it is intended to exist for a short period of time, and it has to be replaced. An anode rod exists to protect the metal lining inside your water heater tank to prevent explosion or corrosion over time. So we all know that water and metal are not, they won't sit around a campfire. So what is the purpose of the anode? So I'm going to give you the technical reading, and this is for the clever people, the chemistry people to understand. For us, we need to keep it as the explanation to your customer as simple as possible, because what I'm going to tell you now, within the first 3 words, you've lost your customer and they won't have a clue what you're talking about. It'll mean nothing to them. So in electrochemistry, the anode is where oxidation occurs, and it is the positive polarity contact in an electrolytic cell. At the anode, anions, which are the negative ions, are forced by the electrical potential to react chemically and give off electrons, oxidation. And it's this oxidation that corrodes the metal lining of your geyser. So, I mean, there's a lot of words in there that, as I say, you're going to lose Mr. and Mrs. Jones very quickly if you try and explain it in a scientific way. So, as we said, the purpose of the sacrificial anode, the anode rod exists to protect the metal lining inside your water heater tank to prevent corrosion over time. So think of your anode as a rod as a magnet, attracting all the corrosive materials to keep it away from the inside of your water heater tank. So you have this rod floating in the middle of nowhere in your tank, and the water gets hot. So whatever's going to attack your cylinder is attracted to this rod. It's drawn to it magnetically, and it starts eating that. And that's what keeps it away from eating at your tank. So when water gets hot, the way I explain it to Mr. and Mrs. Jones is, first of all, Mr. and Mrs. Jones have no idea what an anode is. When you explain to them about anode, they say, oh, I never knew that. Why doesn't anybody ever tell us about this? The answer is, I don't know why people haven't, but I used to tell people exactly what the role of the anode is, how you can extend the life of your geyser, and more importantly, how you're not inconvenienced because now your geyser is blown and you have to get a plumber in. Some people have to take time off work, or you can only come on certain days, and it's a hell of an inconvenience to the homeowner to come and have a geyser replaced. And we all know now with the new geysers, you have to cut the trapdoors larger, and it all becomes a messy replacement. So when water heats up, it becomes corrosive, as I say. So the best way to explain it to them is it heats up, it becomes corrosive, and it wants to eat whatever's in its way. And that is the reason why the sacrificial anode is there. It's to keep it away from the metal cylinder. Another way I also explain it is by referring to it as Pac-Man. Most people, or mainly in the elder generation, will know what Pac-Man is. It was certainly when I was young, it was the first TV game we ever had. And that's exactly what water does. It just eats. It goes around eating. And so that is what the role of the anode is to let the water eat the anode. So how's a geyser made? First of all, we all know that it's constructed, it's a steel tank, metal tank, and then they bond it. In other words, they spray it on the inside with a vitreous glass lining to keep it from rusting, and that is the barrier. There are variations in manufacturing quality. However, some tanks might have a better glass lining than others. It just happens like that. You know, when they mix the chemicals for the vitreous glass, sometimes something goes wrong, and the manufacturing process, and they don't get the ratios right. But 9 out of 10 times they do. And these geysers have been made like this for the past 60 years. Obviously, you do get the other fiberglass geysers. In that case, they don't have an anode because water can't corrode or rust fiberglass. Those of you who have been lucky enough to do a factory visit at, I went to Quicot, and I saw how they produce and manufacture geysers from a flat sheet of metal. Once they've made the geysers and they are hanging upside down, that's when they spray them with this blue metal vitreous glass lining. So those of you who've wondered what a clean geyser looks like inside, this is, I took a geyser, cut it in half, so that's pretty much what it looks like. But you can also see little pits. If you look very closely, you'll see little pits. So once your anode has been eaten and there's nothing left of the anode, there's nothing to protect your geyser. So it'll start looking for those little pit marks, and it'll eat a little hole, and that's when you get your geyser pops and you get a little hole, and with the pressure of the geyser, of the water in the geyser, it squirts through there, and you get a phone call to say, please come replace my geyser, it's burst. Now, this glass lining also can crack, gets very fine hairline cracks, simply because of the expansion and the contraction. So we all know water heats up, and we all know metal, when it heats up, it expands, and when it gets colder, it contracts. So over months and days and years, this glass lining will get a crack. If your anode is not working anymore, the water will find a little crack there and it will start nibbling away. And once it's like that, if you have a look at those little pit marks there, those little rust marks, it'll start nibbling away at that until it's popped a hole through the geyser, and you'll get that phone call to come replace the geyser. So we all know what a sacrificial anode looks like, but that's pretty much what they are. Now, I'm going to ask a question and answer it at the same time, because I know it's probably going to come up. There's a Geyser manufacturer that has had a batch of anodes where you've installed a Geyser or you've put a new anode in, and you get a phone call to say, my water's bubbling, or it's spurting, or it's burping your hot water, and you have no idea what that is. But you put a new Geyser in. So what happened is that when COVID came around and we went into lockdown, they had to change manufacturers, because that specific manufacturer that was producing those anodes also closed down, like all the foundries did, etc. And so they had to find a new supplier. And they did. But for some reason, those anodes caused the water to bubble and splurt and burp, etc. I do believe they have rectified it. So I think you'll still find a few of them in the marketplace, but by and large, they have been replaced. If you do get something like that, all you do is, whichever area you live in, send an email with the Geyser details, the client's details, contact details, etc., to the Electrolux service department, and they will go and replace those anodes. So how long does the sacrificial anode last? So first of all, when there's no sacrificial metal left on the anode rod, and you've only got that little sticky blow dart, your water heater can rust out, eventually causing it to burst, which I explained in the previous slide. Anode rods generally last about 2 years. That's the average, but it really depends mostly on the quality of your water and how much water travels through your water heater. So remember, when water becomes very corrosive, it becomes like Pac-Man piranhas every time it heats up. So if you, for example, 4 people in a house and you just shower once a day, but if you come from a sporting family and you shower, each person showers 2-3 times a day, that water heater is going through many heating cycles, which will make your water heater more prone to corrosion than maybe the people next door. So remember, it's all about the amount of times that your water heater heats up. Because the hotter the water, the more you heat up water, the more corrosive it is, the more it eats. So I can tell you now that in the Western Cape, for example, generally speaking, an anode should be replaced every 18 months. But it also, that is general. But there are areas in, like for instance, in the southern suburbs, where one suburb to another suburb, the water hardness or softness can differ. So if you are in maintenance, just check with the relevant Geyser manufacturers, the service departments in your area, and find out from them what in your area is the general lifespan of an anode, and are there any areas that are harder or softer than others. And that way you keep a log of Geyser replacements or anode replacements, and you'll know when you need to do anode replacements. So as I say, they're made from magnesium, aluminium, and zinc. They are different softnesses. So some anodes will be eaten a lot quicker than others, but that also, as I say, depends on the amount, the water quality in your area and the amount of times that your water heater goes through a heating cycle. Generally speaking, aluminium anodes are longer lasting. So this is what happens when an anode from new to when it's worn. I've seen these things where it's just a back nut. nothing left but just a back nut or a small little piece of blow dart sticking out there. Generally also speaking, when your anode reaches just over or around 50% worn, it's also good to replace them. So that's also not a bad idea. Some more pictures of anodes, so you can see what happens when it's eaten. So is it too late to replace a sacrificial anode? So the downside is that if you wait too long to replace the anode rod, it may be too late. Remember, if the water has found a little pit mark in the glass lining and it started nibbling away there, even though you put a new anode in, that process has started already. That rust has started already. If more than 5 years has passed, I think we all know that it may be too late to save the water heater. So before changing the part, a plumbing professional can drain the water heater to gauge the extent of corrosion inside the tank. Now, that can be easy or can be difficult. I've had cases where I have in the past drained a geyser. You look inside, you see, oh, there's lots of little rust marks. So you try and wipe the geyser clean to determine if it's rust or just sediment lying there. Generally speaking, if you see rust there, you just tell the client, look, the process has started already. You'll probably delay it by maybe an extra year, but it is going to burst sometime. The problem is you put an anode in, you tell the client, okay, put an anode in, it's going to last longer. And 3 months time, you get a call to say, you told me the geyser is going to last and now it's burst. So yeah, if you see any rust, just leave it, tell them, let it run, and then you start the process the next time when it comes to replacing the anode. So in today's world, where business is tough, let's face it, it's not easy. Plumbers need to start looking at diversification within their businesses. So what you can do is, if you tech savvy, you can put up a spreadsheet on your computer, and if you're not, that's fine. An exercise book, a pen and a ruler, and you can draw lines and write everything in. Keep a record of all your geyser replacements and anode replacements. And then 2 weeks before replacement date, send a notice to your client that it's time to replace the anode. And then you go and replace the anode. Now, just for example, probably if you do around 10 anode replacements a month, you could add an extra 10 grand to your bottom line. That's a lot of money. For the bigger guys, they're probably not going to feel it too much, but for the smaller guys, the maintenance plumber, 10 grand extra a month, that's not a bad income. So definitely have a look at that. And if you send out 10 renewal notices a month and you only get 7, well, that's 7 extra grand that you never had before. So I'm just giving a figure, but yeah, so you're going to obviously buy the anode, you're going to put on a margin, you're all entitled to a profit. It's your time to go and buy the anode, and then obviously all your labor involved. So I like to explain, in the beginning I spoke about the electrochemistry of the anode and where oxidation occurs and all that. Within 3 words, you've lost your client. So just keep it simple. Explain to them. Liken it to the fact that when water gets hot, it becomes corrosive and starts to eat your geyser in the same way that Pac-Man eats or piranhas attack. And also the anode performs exactly the same role as a computer's antivirus. The antivirus protects your computer from malware. So The antivirus does not last long either, exactly like an anode. It has to be replaced. It has to be, your antivirus has to be updated from time to time, your anode also. Once there's nothing left of the anode, then it's the same as a computer operating without an antivirus. It will crash. The only thing is you don't know when. Today, tomorrow, next week, next month. Your geyser will pop a hole. You just don't know when. A good telltale sign is when your hot water starts turning that funky brown color. You get a call from a customer and they say, my geysers, my hot water's discolored, it's brown. That's a good telltale sign that things are going wrong within that geyser. No, guys, thank you very much. I think most of the Western Cape guys know who I am. You do contact me regularly. So yeah, just remember, please, guys, COVID is very real, and protect yourself. Doesn't matter whether your client in his house doesn't want to protect himself, whatever. Make sure you protect yourself and those around you. And just remember, if you practice best plumbing practices and according to the SANS regulations, you will have a good, healthy night's sleep. Thanks, guys.